if we want to combat hair loss and still have something that works in anabolism for muscle growth. What we can see here is on the left side how much it affected the prostate, meaning that What's up guys and welcome back. Today we are going to talk about SARMs, and namely S1, S2, S3 and S4, and if they're gonna affect your hair loss and make it worse, or even what's gonna happen and how they work. So I thought in the beginning it could be interesting to talk about why we even have SARMs in the first place. Let's say you are under a procedure where you have benign prostate hyperplasia. That's when the prostate is growing, and that is most of the time a concern for cancer cells growth. So if they want to stop the prostate from growing, they have to stop activating it with androgen receptors. Now, if we were to just stop the androgen receptors from working, we could use something like flutamide, and it would inhibit all the androgen activation completely, more or less. One of the problems if you are using flutamide to inhibit all the androgen activation is also that it is going to inhibit muscle growth or anabolism, or whatever you will call it. So let's say you are in some kind of cancer treatment and you use flutamide. One of the concerns is that you are going to lose a lot of body weight, and due to lower anabolic response, you are going to lose a lot of muscle mass, and muscle mass is very important when we are trying to combat something like cancer. So this is where SARMs are beginning to become very interesting, because they are engineered to activate the anabolic ratio, because they are engineered to still have some anabolism but also inhibit all the androgen activation, meaning that they are going to inhibit all the prostate growing factors but still want to make you keep your muscle mass to fight off your disease. So if we translate this into bodybuilding, this is where it becomes really interesting, because we now have a compound that will increase your anabolism, meaning that it will help you grow more muscle, but also it will inhibit your androgen activation, meaning that you won't get so much hair loss or even growth in the prostate or anything like that. So now that we know why SARMs were developed in the first place and basically why they're engineered to act as they do, we can take a look at this study. Although this is not about S4, it is about this drug S1, but we can do what I call But we can do an extrapolation of the data, meaning that if we compare the data to other stuff and even compare S1 to S4, we can extrapolate some data and make assumptions on how it will work on your hairline and muscle growth. Keep in mind that when they made S1, S4 is an improved version of the S1. S1 was a discontinued drug, and S4 is the newest version of the drug that has better safety profiles and yada yada yada, the whole stuff. In the end, it is the newer version of the drug, just keep that in mind. The reason why I'm using S1 as the extrapolation source is that there aren't really any studies on S4 and how it works on the androgen receptors and also on the anabolism of the drug. But if we take a look at the study, and I'm going to show it up here somewhere, I am just going to refer to the study out of complete memory, since I don't have my computer here or anything like that. I read the whole study, and I'm just going to take away some key points that could be of interest to you guys. So in this study, they did a comparison with hydroxyflutamide, finasteride and S1 to see some benefits of the drug or even some side effects. What we want to look at here is first off the graph that I have here. So this graph shows two parameters of all three drugs that is of great interest to us guys if we want to combat hair loss and still have something that works in anabolism for muscle growth. What we can see here is on the left side how much it affected the prostate, meaning that what we see here is the decrease in prostate size, and on the right side we see an increase or decrease in the levator any muscle size. Keep in mind, whichever muscle they used to measure the outcome doesn't really matter, because all muscles work in the same way in the end when we are talking about anabolic hormones. I know some guys like Derek from More Plates, More Dates have some kind of belief that we have more androgen receptors in the neck muscle and so on, and I don't share the same belief, but I won't argue that in this video or anything like that. Just keep in mind, this is my point of view on this stuff. So what we see here first, if we take hydroxyflutamide, is that In the first 3 graphs over to the left side, we can see when they increased the dosage of hydroxyflutamide, we had a decrease in size of the prostate. This was by far the strongest compound in decreasing prostate size, meaning that it is the best androgen antagonist and it will have the greatest efficiency in keeping your hairline safe. The only problem is when we take a look at the right side of the graph, we can also see that it actually decreased the muscle size. This is one of the problems that occurs when you are using androgen antagonists, that most of them will decrease muscle size. This is also why they made SARMs, as I just explained in the start of the video. Now, when we take a look at the compound S1, we can see that when we increase the dosage of S1, we get a decrease in how effective it was in decreasing prostate size, meaning that if you take enough of this stuff, you will at some point have a negative effect on your androgen receptors. But if we take a look at the right side of the graph, we can actually see that it was the best component to increase the muscle size. Lastly, we can see here that we have finasteride. Finasteride was only used in a clinical dosage, meaning that this is the FDA approved dosage for benign prostate hyperplasia, and this is the only dosage they were gonna use. Now, it did work, but as you can see, it was the worst component to decrease prostate size, but it actually helped increase muscle size to some extent. So if we take the 3 drugs, we can see that hydroxyflutamide is the best for hair loss, but it is also the worst for your muscle growth. We can see that finasteride is the worst for prostate size or hair growth, but it is also a pretty good component when you're trying to grow muscle mass. So if you want to keep your muscle mass, of course, finasteride is a good option. And lastly, we can see S1. S1 was really good at decreasing prostate size, meaning that it doesn't affect your hair loss in the same way that the other drugs would, but also that it increased muscle size to a great extent. So if we do an extrapolation and we say that S4 is a newer and modified to be better version of S1, we can assume that S4 will, at some dosages, help you regain some hair even to some extent, and it will help you increase muscle size. So there are some factors that aren't talked about in this study, mostly because we are talking about prostate size here. And if we are talking about hair loss, I see one major concern about this factor. If you are going to use something like S4 to decrease your prostate size or decrease your hair loss or increase your hair growth, whatever you call it, and increase your muscle size, you are going to stop producing testosterone. When you stop producing testosterone, you won't have the conversion into estrogen. This means you'll have low estrogen at some point, and a problem is that low estrogen will tend to increase your hair loss, meaning that if you only do S4 alone, you are going to experience hair loss at some point. I believe this is why you see some guys on forums saying that they started shedding from using S1, S4, whatever they used, because not actually the drug itself caused the hair loss, but they were missing estrogens at the end of whatever cycle they were doing, and that actually caused some hair loss. So my recommendation is, if you are going to use something like S4 and you are scared about hair loss, I would definitely supplement with a normal dosage of testosterone, meaning something like 100 milligrams weekly, to keep your estrogen high enough so you won't experience hair loss. And guys, at the end of the day, these are just my assumptions on the topic. I don't know if it's true or false, since there aren't any studies on this. At the end of the day, guys, it is up to you to do your research, and I really hope that this has helped some of you bring some light to the topic and given you some food for thoughts. If you have any comments or questions, just post them below. And until next time, I'll see you. Cheers.